What's up everyone, today we are going to be painting the Hounds from Claustrophobia 1643. And we're going to be using the airbrush for the majority of their chest and their skin, but you do not need an airbrush to get any of this done, and I'll definitely explain during the video what you would do if you do not have an airbrush. But I've been trying to mix airbrush into my videos so that I can capture a wider range of the audience who is using both things. And of course you do get finer blends and you get easier coverage than you do with traditional paintbrush. But without further ado, let's get down to the table and I'll show you how I knock these monsters out. Alright, like as I said, we're starting in the airbrushing booth with some whole red. This is a really dark brown red color that we're going to base the underbelly of both of the dogs. So we're going to be doing both of them at the same time, and you'll see me switch back and forth between the two models. But that's because while some of their details are different, overall their entire color scheme is pretty much exactly the same. So I'll only switch to them specifically when I'm pointing out a thing that you have to hit that's different than the other one, but only this one here, the Hellhound with its mouth open, is getting anything really different done to it. So now I'm switching to Scarlet Red, and if you do not have an airbrush, what you would want to do is just layer this on. So you're just doing a base layer of the whole red, and then you're layering from the sides and the front Scarlet Red. It's going to take a couple of coats. And then I'm moving on to flat red. Same thing, it's going to take a couple of coats. Red is really difficult to layer over anything. Even when you layer it over white, it's still too thin. So it's going to take a couple of coats. I'm being a little messy with it because I'm going to go back and do the skin tone for the top part of the body. So I'm not too worried about it being exact. I'm just trying to get some really bright and hot spots, and then some transitions that are seamless and smooth. This is hot orange, and that is going to be the last color that I hit, and that is just from the front of the chest. So that is just at the very top of the chest. Now I'm using base flesh from Vallejo's Nocturna line, and this is a very pale skin tone. And it's going to take a couple of coats. If you're using a brush, this would actually be a little bit easier. If you're using an airbrush and you're a beginner, I think that it might be better to actually switch to a brush at this point. Because the airbrush, you have to be delicate so that you don't just go and paint right over all of the red that you just did and, you know, kind of mess up. But what I wanted was a little bit of red tone underneath the skin as a transition, so that it almost works as wet blending. It didn't need to be as smooth as wet blending because I'm assuming that they have fur or something, but it's going to take a couple of coats. So as you can see here, this is the second coat going on, and now I'm being more precise with where I'm hitting on the dog here, really trying to get that skin tone to completely cover up the red in the areas that I don't want there to be any of that red, but leaving a little bit of that red behind right at that transition phase, so it's not a stark transition. But definitely a good model to practice on if you're trying to refine your skills, because it's very forgiving. Now what I'm doing here is I have the base, and you can see that I primed the base before I remove the dogs from it. And that's important because when you remove them, now you can see where their feet are going to hit, and it makes it really easy to put down any kind of basing material without worrying about them going back in the same position, because you can see exactly where they're going to go. Because the holes alone aren't enough to tell you where the other 2 feet are going to be. But the part that I'm coloring in here with a brown marker is going to be the lava flow, because I want these dogs to be standing over some lava. And so I'm just kind of blocking those areas out. So you can see here I've got one that's going to be sort of like a big puddle lake, and the other one is going to be a small river or stream going through. This is some of Vallejo's black asphalt. I think it's also a black lava. I think depending on when you when you buy it or how old your tub of it is. Both names are on there. This is just some mixing medium that has like sand grain in it and really dark black ink in it. So you can easily make it yourself with any other kind of tone and then paint over it black if you wanted to. But I'm using it as black to look like it's just scorched earth. And then I'm using Mechanicus standard gray here to just dry brush. I'm hitting much heavier along the edges of the base and then edges where the actual lava is going to be, so that when I paint the red over it for the lava, you'll actually be able to see it as if it was a little bit of OSL. It's not really object source lighting because I'm not going to spend any real time on that, but by having a lighter tone there, the red is going to reflect on that really easily. So here I have laid out some Vallejo water texture, and then I'm going to put some Scarlet red over top of that water texture and mix it together. And this is going to be the base coat for the lava. So the water texture will make it look like it's a really thick paint without you having to actually paint 55 layers on there. So I really like this stuff, and it takes color very, very well. As you can see here, it just instantly transformed into red water. And then I'm going to take that red water there, and I'm going to paint it all over the brown area that we have designated that's going to be lava. So I'm doing this on both bases simultaneously. It takes pretty much 10 hours or so to dry, so it is a good thing to do this. You can work on the base before you're working on your model, and that way by the time you're done with your model, you can just let them both sit there and dry together. It does take a little while, but you want to make sure that that is nice and smooth so that it becomes a nice water texture. Now I'm taking some Reikland Fleshshade, and I have it thinned with just some water, and I'm painting this into all of the crevices and shadows of the muscle. So I'm trying to get some definition in the shadows as well, because we're going to go much brighter for the skin from here, but I don't think that this was dark enough to start with, and I also didn't want to start with an even darker color. I'm taking Ivory and doing all of the teeth. This is on both models, and the reason is we're going to use a wash to shade the teeth and get the definition on them, so it's good to just start with the white color because the shade will bring them down to like a nasty sepia tone. So now I have P3's Thrall Flesh. This is a very gross looking, very pale color of skin tone. And I'm just highlighting the skin like you would any other model that has skin, starting from the top down, and then I mixed in some Ivory into that skin tone and started painting it. Well, we're trying to push this so that the skin actually looks like it's a very sickly white, a very, very sickly pale skin. And the way that I'm doing that is just by adding brighter and brighter tones into it. It also is taking a couple of coats each time to make sure that you're really getting the color out of it. So here's that Agrax that we're putting on the teeth. Back over to the base, it's now dry. So we're going to start building up that lava, and what we're going to want to do is, depending on how bright you want the lava to be, you can use different colors. Here I'm using flat red. It's going to take a couple of coats. The flat red is thinned just as you would painting the model, so you don't want it to go on thick, because then you'll see brush strokes all over, especially since it's a big flat area. Mixed white in, some pure white into our skin tone that we've just been building, and then I'm hitting all of the highest peaks on the skin and really trying to make this guy shine. You have Orange Fire. Orange Fire is about the third, well, it's the third tone that I'm using, but it's probably third from last as well. I'm not going to show anymore, but I then started mixing some yellow in, and then right where the two rivers sort of meet at that Y junction, I then used some white right there to just make it look like a really big hot spot. Reddish flesh just to paint in the gum line and the tongue of this jumping dog, the two-footed dog. And then I'm using some Reikland Fleshshade to go and shade all of the mouth area. Now I have Ivory, and Ivory I am going over the teeth again, as well as all of the spikes on the back, to sort of make them look just really pronounced and bright, because they're still sort of matching the skin tone. Want them to bring them to an even brighter level. And then finally we're going to touch up everything with just some regular white. And we're going to touch up all of the little points there that need to be touched up. With that, they are all done. You can see those lava bases. I think those really sell it and make it look really good. If I were to do it again, I think I would have also highlighted the chest area with a little bit of extra red and things like that. But please let me know what you guys would like to see painted up next. Don't forget to like the video if you liked it, and subscribe for more painting content. And we'll see you all next time.
New outro, I know. If you want to watch more in this series, click right here. If you would like to watch another video in a completely different series, click right here. And if you'd like an easy way to subscribe, other than clicking down below, even though it's right there and it says subscribe, you can click on this little picture right here. That also works.